I want to ask you about a couple of things that you were involved in. First, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which went to Atlantic City, the Democratic National Convention, in an effort to have its delegation seated. And then, afterwards, you go down to Lowndes County, Alabama, and you're involved in the organizing of an all-Black party down in Lowndes. I'm wondering if you can talk about both of those experiences, both with the MFDP and in Lowndes, and also what you see if you see those two initiatives as being connected.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, first of all, in terms of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, what happens at Atlantic City, and I'll tell about that, is very much one of the reasons that we go into Lowndes County and start what is kind of talked about as the Black Panther Party, that first one, not Huey Newton and them. And so when we go up, we're organizing in Mississippi to form a party, Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, number one, because the all-white delegation to the Democratic National Convention that year, 1964, in Atlantic City, it's all white. And the precinct meetings are being held that are supposed to be open to everybody, but they're not. They are denied. We are denied entry to them at the local level. But it's also to show the nation that what the two white Mississippi senators and all of the white congressmen from Mississippi are saying is not true. Because what the white folks in Mississippi in Congress are saying is that, Black folks just don't want to vote. They are willing to leave, this up to us. This is white folks' business. And they say it that way. This is white folks' business. And so the assumption is that by some people that just Black folks just don't want to vote, right? So what we do with first the freedom vote in January of 64, and then the big push around the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which is integrated. We say we are open, whoever will, let them come. If you subscribe to our principles, you are welcome here. And so we start this party, Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and we say we will be loyal to the platform, the Democratic platform in 1964, and we will support the candidates, whoever the nominees are. At that point, it's probably going to be Lyndon Johnson, and it ends up being Hubert Humphrey. But it's what they say is we will pledge allegiance to both the party and to the platform and the nominees. Okay, to all three of those. So we go up, and the campaign is, all of that organizing is going on with all of these local people in Mississippi. Mrs. Hamer, Mrs. Devine, Mrs. Gray, and all those, Larry Giat, all those folks are going up. I go up in one of the SNCC cars, we go up to Atlantic City. When we get there, because of a lot of the organizing that Ms. Baker has, the lobbying that Ms. Baker has organized, because she knows all this stuff. So she's working out of the DC SNCC office with the Congress people and whatever, to talk about how we can have the most effect in Atlantic City at this Democratic National Convention in 1964. And so we go up there, and we really have gotten promises from a lot of the delegates from Washington State, from New York, from wherever, that they will support our main goal, which was to get the credentials committee to say, we are going to credential this Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party delegation as opposed to the all-white Democratic delegation out of Mississippi. So we were all focused on the credentials committee. And we had gotten commitments. And then suddenly Hubert Humphrey, he was sent in, but there were people who were sent in by Lyndon Johnson to make sure that we did not mess up his support from the Dixiecrats, the white segregationists from Mississippi. And so Lyndon Johnson did everything he could to stomp on us. And so the people who were supporting us, and these were Congress people and whatever, we started hearing one Black woman who said in tears, she was on the phone, and they talk about this in some documentaries that are done. Freedom on My Mind, for example, talks about this, where she says, is on the phone crying and saying, I can no longer support, as a member of the Credentials Committee, I can no longer support credentialing the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party because my Black husband is up for judgeship. And I want him to get the judgeship, you know. And she really was, she was so torn. And we started hearing that all the way through. And then some other things happened, which I won't go into. Bottom line, what we find out, we, the movement, that SNCC and CORE particularly, is that politics isn't about morality, right? It's about power. And what we have seen in Atlantic City is real evidence of white power. So we decide, okay, that's white power, you know. So when we, off the Selma March, when I go in as well, but others, you know, certainly Stokely, and they talk about it, you know, they talk about what can happen in Alabama now. And from the momentum of this Selma March, John Lewis had been part of it. The Selma March happens, Bloody Sunday happens, and Dr. King and SCLC move a lot of folks in because they were very much into mobilization, having large marches. And we, on the other hand, at SNCC, we're very much into, you know, the kind of organizing in the local community and being there, you know, for the long haul. And we had, at that point, by the Selma March, we had decided as an organization, we were no longer doing large marches. Now, John Lewis said he wanted to do that. And we said, okay, you will go as an individual then. Now, of course, Bloody Sunday, and I was in the office when John calls and says, you know, Dr. King isn't here. We thought he was going to be here. And John is standing there with Hosea Williams of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King's organization. You got 700 people behind you. Bloody, the troops are arrayed in front of them, but they got, you know, John says, we've got 700 people behind us, you know, what should we do? You know, and so he's talking to Jim Foreman in our office at that point, at the national office. So they march, and then Bloody Sunday, and you know, they just get bloodied. Everybody gets bloodied, including Bob Mance, who's behind him, another SNCC person. And of course, Mrs. Boynton, and lots of children and all of that. But what we do, SNCC does after that, is to go into Lowndes County and Wilcox County. And, you know, Lowndes County was 80% Black. And there was like one Black registered voter, and that registered voter had gotten registered in Birmingham. You know, it's like, so, but there was a local movement there. That's what was important. There was a local movement, Mr. Hewlett, and he invited Stokely in and said, look, I've got an organization. SCLC said they didn't want to go because it was, you know, it was rural, it was too far away, and from a major city. And so, and a lot of this is in the wonderful Dr. Hassan Jeffries' Bloody Lowndes, because he talks about all of this organizing and stuff in Lowndes County. And what we found was these local people, a lot of them Black farm owners. So they were independent of this, you know, they were not domestic workers. They were not working in white shops. You know, they were, or rather cleaning up in you know, janitorial staff, for example. But they were Black farm owners in Selma. I'm sorry, in Lowndes County and Wilcox County, and they, you know, they guided us and we worked with them. And then at some point, you know, we knew we needed, we did an election because Jack Minnis back in the research department, when Stokely says, you know, we need to figure out something about, and Jack Minnis finds that there is an arcane law in the Alabama Constitution that allows an independent party to form if it gets, and it can go, and it can be an established party if it gets a certain percentage of the vote during a primary. So we go in and we start organizing the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, and it becomes a party, you know, and then we need some kind of logo, and, you know, and folks want to know what it should be. And it ends up being a Black Panther, because as Johnny Jackson, who was a local student then, he said, you know, and we knew that, oh, I should say, the logo of the Alabama Democratic Party at that time was a white rooster. and it said whites, and the logo had writing above the rooster that said white supremacy for the right. White supremacy. They were real clear about this in Alabama. And so when we got the Black Panther, I was mentioning Johnny Jackson, and Johnny Jackson said, look, we knew that a Black Panther could beat a white rooster any day in the week, and so people were very proud of that, and we used comic books, we used everything at our disposal to talk about the reason you need to vote is because this is what a judge does. This is what a sheriff does. This is what, to talk about the relationship between the vote and the everyday oppression that they were experiencing. In Lowndes County, we did the same thing in Mississippi, Alabama, wherever we were. You have to make it local. You have to make people understand there's a reason why we're suggesting that you vote. It's not the only thing you should do, but it's one of those things that is necessary, but not sufficient, but it's necessary, So we always talked about the justice of the peace, the person who's going to be, your representative, helping you do teaching, getting Black teachers. All of that relates to who's in power, and you get the power primarily through the right to vote. We don't have all the campaign money, right? So the point is, this can be the great equalizer. The vote can be the great equalizer if you use it, and if you continue your organizing so that once you elect somebody, they still understand they have to be accountable to your needs.